Yep.
Yeah,
Sports are an escape, man.
I
They're an
know.
escape.
Well, in this modern political environment, it's the one thing we can all come together on. Like when I've gone
Thank
to
you.
all of these parades for the Chiefs, it's like, look at all these people just happy. And there's no political divisiveness. There's no weird media
Yeah.
saying this is happening. It's just we're all coming out in the sunshine. We're celebrating just being alive on this planet. And sometimes that's all we need, man. You know?
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Well,
That and somewhere in Montana, because I'll tell you about that one.
that's
It's a great film for that exact thing.
so this is a perfect segue into it. I've watched the trailer. I've really read up on this. What a wonderful film. Talk to me a little bit about how did this come about? I know when you I think for the layperson, they don't understand the journey that films take from inception idea to actually getting it on the screen. So give me kind of a little bit of an abstract.
Absolutely. So, I mean, every film kind of has its own path. I think for Brandon Smith, who's the writer and the director of the project, he really wanted it to be in theaters, and he wanted it to be in theaters because it's a real unique talk piece. It's a coming together of two worlds, and don't we all need to see that right now? Different opposing forces, different energies, being put in an impossible situation. So the rundown of the story essentially is I play Fabian Verdugo. He's a West Coast director. His legacy is film. He is thrust into a world of John Alexander, played by my friend Graham McTavish. His legacy is his working ranch, right? His cattle ranch. The thing that brings us together is that we both need each other because I need his ranch for the last location of my film. And this is actually a question that's been asked of me recently, and I really understand it. Doing a deep dive into directors is that they really, really care about the specificity of like where they're shooting their film because again, it's something that lives on past them. Fabian Verdugo is this like passionate, director. And this is like what he considers his legacy piece, something that's really important to him. So he needs the location to be just perfect. And it happens to be John's ranch. Well, John isn't sure that he wants a film to be on his ranch because then that becomes part of his legacy. And, he's got that more beautiful, simplistic legacy. And, at first, I think, being the outsider in this project, it was great because I think it taught me a lot of, the tone of where both the opposing characters, because again, the way that Brandon wrote it, which I thought was brilliant, and it's very rarely done, is that we're both the protagonists and the antagonists of the same story. So we're both good people and we both care about what we care about, but we both antagonize each other. And isn't that like literally life right now, right? So essentially I show up on his ranch unbeknownst to me at this point in the script. His ranch is running on life support. Like he basically like is battling with the banks to even keep the thing open, right? And so he needs me and I need him. And isn't that like a story that we all need right now? So essentially right away, like you can tell, like we're two different people. We are butting heads right off the bat because again, we would never be seen in the same room together. We would
Yeah.
never be like having a conversation together. Like we just know who those two types of people are right now in our society, right? And Brandon basically just wrote a story where they were like thrust upon each other. Like they had to work it out, right? And so it really just becomes this like butting heads thing in the beginning, but we work through that and we, discover within this, and I think I discovered it within even shooting the film there, that, it really just becomes a story of finding what I consider the highest form of love and mutual respect. It goes into legacy, American legacy, which again, films get a lot of credit because they're broadcast to the world. But there is something so beautiful, Joe, about being on an active cattle ranch and
Yeah.
seeing the cornerstone and see something that someone's physically built with their hands that's beautiful and overlooking the mountains. And I mean, Montana, oh my God, let me tell you about Montana. I mean, it is God's wallpaper. Like it's absolutely an artist's dream to shoot in. And what I realized from this project specifically is, because I was shopping for my wife the last day after the screening, and three people came up to me, Joe. They all said the same thing. They said it was so important for us to see a story about our little corner of the world
Yeah.
being told. And I think that's where a lot of the dissonance is happening in our country, that people don't feel like they have a voice or they feel like they don't matter, right? And so I think that, Fabian has kind of lived on through me because now I have a production company with my wife, and I want to bring these small stories to little pockets of the country, starting with where we're both originally from in Front Royal, Virginia, to give back because I think that there's something that can be said when you can see it, not just, not hear it from the news or see it on social media, which might or might not be true.
Yeah.
When you can actually see, an artistic vision come to life and you can see two people that you're like, whoa, these two are not going to get along. And they don't, but then they find a way to find common ground. And Graham and I have a 10-page scene together. And it is the ultimate talk piece. It's why I fell in love with the role and the character because it's a conversation just like we're having right now.
Yeah.
And it's two men, and we didn't make it too precious. We didn't make it, we wanted to really ground it. We wanted to make it authentic and genuine because this is a conversation that I feel like so many of us need to have right now.
Yeah.
And it's got a limited release right now. We're hoping for an expansion, which means that it will eventually come to more theaters. But I say all the time, I'll be broadcasting all the updates on my social media at Matt Drago on Instagram, MattDrago, with where it's going to land when it gets to streaming and VOD as well.
I love the poster too, the art. It just, it has that real honey glow Star Wars 70s popping out, just like the silhouette. I mean, just everything about it just kind of pops out. I love it, you
I
know?
can't give enough credit to our producer, who also is a photographer, which worked out.
Yeah.
Eden Matson. She actually, it was my idea because I realized at the end of the shoot that we didn't have any good pictures of Graham and I together, and I really wanted. I feel like this was my producer brilliant because I learned so much from Eden and Joe because I felt like maybe directing wasn't my thing, but I've always been in sales, so I felt like let me like learn as much as I can. And Joe Borden, who is the funniest guy, he used to write for Tosh Point oh, and he just like kept us laughing the whole like month and a half. But he was the money guy. He was the one that went out and got money. Eden was the one that balanced like 12 hats at all times. But that day I was like, can you grab your camera? I talked to Graham at breakfast. I was like, we're going to get a couple pictures. And Eden took us to the highest point in Polson, overlooking that lake. And, I just wanted the pictures to come out that like we were searching for understanding with each other.
Yeah.
Even if we're looking in two different directions, even if we're two different worlds, and I learned this being on set, there is more that can connect us than could ever divide us if we just let each other in. And so like I think she just, obviously because she's a brilliant photographer, took the most perfect picture and then she edited it in that watercolor kind of, almost like what's behind you right now, like the big, bold, bright colors. And it just came out as beautiful as you saw it. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's something magical about Montana. Anytime I think about Montana, I'm not really familiar with it. I've been through it. I went up in my 20s, friends of mine. We drove from Kansas City through the West. We knew it would be our last hurrah before we'd go off into life and, weddings and all of those things. And
Sure.
it was when they didn't have a speed limit. We actually got pulled over. The signs
Wow.
were like, be safe and prudent. We got pulled over and we all had ponytails and all this
Nice.
together. And cops like, what the hell are you guys doing? And I don't know how we got out of it, but we did. But I just realized recently David Lynch is from Missoula, Montana, which makes sense to me now that he became this massive mind that we've been so fortunate to have swam through for a while. That's where he was
Wow.
born and raised. Those are all of his early memories. So think about Twin Peaks and all of those. You know what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
grandiose idea of Montana was always in his films.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's so beautiful. That does make sense. I mean, as artists, we are born out of what we know, and then we have to utilize that in any way that we can. And I think that's why, my wife Laura and I really want to bring a film back to Front Royal, Virginia, because it's where we were born. And sometimes there are times in your life like where you are like, oh no, no, like I mean I'm from there, but like like I'm not like from there, you
Yeah.
like and then there's that point in your life, and I've been saying it a lot, where like nostalgia starts to hit deep, and it starts to really, really hit deep, and you're just kind of like, like how many things are beautiful about this little town. Like Front Royal for me, like growing up, like I knew I wanted to go to New York. I knew I wanted to pursue theater. Maybe that was going to bring me to LA, which it did. But like there's always been this really interesting cosmic pull about Front Royal, Virginia. I'll tell you really, really quickly about it and why we want to do a film there.
Yeah.
So Front Royal, Virginia on the map in the Confederate times used to be called literally on the map Helltown. Like it
Wow.
literally was like used to be called Helltown. The reason why, Joe, is because it was like that meeting point between the North and the South, where like off the field of battle, they would kind of come together in this little town and have some good trouble, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They'd get into some, you know, messy stuff, right? But it was all kind of like almost on the field of play, right? In a way where it was like they were two opposing forces, but like, they'd get drunk and they would, have their fun, right? So it really kind of became this like interesting little meeting point in the Appalachian Hills. And every time I go back there, Joe, it's so interesting that like there's something that happens that's just odd. I'll
Yeah.
tell you about one. I went to the Naughty Pine, which is the oldest bar in Front Royal, Virginia. We might even use it as a location. And there's this guy that I haven't seen for probably about 15 years, like since I was a kid, right? And I was talking about him after I got my fourth degree black belt because my dad is the karate guy in town. So I've been doing karate my whole life. Well, afterwards, I needed a couple beers, right? Like I'm all bruised up and I'm going with my friend Ian McLean and Rachel Bon Jovi. And like, we're just like, let's go to the Naughty Pine and let's like, have a couple drinks, right? And so we go to the Naughty Pine and I'm talking about my friend, right, that I haven't seen for like a long time that named his son Drago, his first name Drago, because he was so close to my dad. And
Yeah.
so, it was just this really weird thing. I'm talking about him, I'm talking about him, I'm talking about him. And then all of a sudden he's like the bartender is like, oh, he's here right now. And it was the craziest thing that like he looks at me, he looks at my face, and all of a sudden he does this thing where he's like seeing me, but like I'm a full grown man now. And he had this look and he was like, Matt? And I was like, oh my God, oh my God. And we just gave each other a big hug and we hung out. So it's like those kinds of little cosmic pulls
Yeah.
that happen in our little town. And I've noticed it my whole entire life with people that I've been there. And I think I realized, especially shooting somewhere in Montana, how much it means to the town,
Yeah.
how much these films mean to the town. Because if you can ask the guy that you've known the whole life that owns the lumber yard, hey, could you build me a bar? Or could you, donate a meal? Like my wife, her family owns the Apple House. Shout out to the Apple House. Like it's a small little country store.
Yeah.
Maybe they can, throw a couple meals our way. Like it all is part of putting your stamp on something that you can be proud of. And I think that's really what makes film beautiful. This is the first film, Joe, that like I looked through the credits and I knew everybody's name because the cast and the crew for this one, it was so tight
Yeah.
that we were all interchangeable. We were all part of a story that was bigger than ourselves. And we would hang out. We go to the
Yeah.
bar, we get our drinks together. I mean, like it's just, I think indie films are so important right now.
Oh, yeah.
And I urge all your listeners to go out and support them because these are human stories told by
Absolutely.
human people and their sacrifice and we don't have the big marketing budget. So it's getting on, shows like yours today. And thank you
Yeah.
for having me on because it's those little conversations that pique the people's interest and then get them to come to a movie that I believe really, really matters right now.
Yeah, that's so well said. I think about in the 90s, I love indie films, and it was so fertile in the 90s. There were so many good ones that came out. I mean, from the highest top of like Quentin Tarantino to
Yeah.
just regular films that were coming out, and they're so flavor rich. Helltown reminds me a little bit of like having a carnival in the DMZ. It's like this little middle ground where everybody comes in, but it's weird. I'm 52. And when I turned 50, my stepdaughter said, what have you realized about getting to this age? And it goes to what you're saying here. In your life, when you get old, you finally come back. Everything's full circle. So
Yeah,
you've moved to New York and you got as far away in LA as you can be.
sure.
Geographically, you're far, but you're coming back. You're coming
Yeah,
back home. You're paying
yeah.
homage to this history, to your life, and you're bringing it all together. And what a great thing. What a cathartic circle for you to be able to do.
100%. And that's part of like what makes like art so joyful is if you can find that practice within yourself and say, okay, like, again, I think when you're in your 20s sometimes like it's like more transactional where you're sort of like, well, I gotta impress my agent, I gotta impress my manager, I gotta book this job.
Yeah.
And I mean, I tell people this all the time, like with Somewhere in Montana, I feel like I've already won. And I mean that because it's the relationships. It's like Graham was like, messaging me a couple weeks ago because of the Castaic fire near me. And he was like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And that's like a friend. Like he's the first person that called me mate. He's a Scottish guy, like, which is a sign of camaraderie. We were brothers in arms with this film because we really had those conversations off screen to translate them off on screen. And same with Michelle Hurd. I mean, she became a big sister to me. And like with her body of work, with her knowledge base, with her being on the SAG board, like I can't get enough of her. Like she is just like my person. And I just love her and her husband Garrett so much. They are a power couple and they love actors. And so like when I think about all these relationships that I gained from this experience and all that I learned from this experience, I'm like, no, I've already won, Matt. So what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? You're going to do much like Fabian. It's the first, character that you've ever truly fallen in love with. Why don't you keep parts of him that you love close to your heart and utilize that for the next chapter in your life to produce your own movie and do very much like Fabian Verdugo did in Somewhere in Montana?
So what was the movie for you growing up that fueled this love and this desire for the movie industry?
For sure. I mean, I think there are so many. I mean, I think of like, Robin Williams. I think of like, just so many great performances. But Hook for me, Mrs. Doubtfire is one that last scene as a child of divorce that I cannot like watch without just completely breaking down. I grew up an Italian kid, so I was always gravitated towards the Godfathers.
Yeah.
I actually lived right across the street from Al Pacino. We in New York City, and we'd go to the same diner. And I finally mustered up the strength to go up to him one day and just politely, just and he knew that I knew who he was, obviously. And like I just looked at him as I was leaving, and I said, "Have a great day, Al." And like very very understated. And he looked right up at me from his paper, and he's like, "You too." Or he said, "You too, kid," like, and I was just like, ah,
Oh
like,
yeah.
so him, De Niro, all the Scorsese movies, just the Rockies, obviously, Rocky 4 has a pretty good villain name, I think. What is
Yeah.
it? Drago?
Yeah. Ivan Drago.
He's
Yeah.
he's the Russian name, so
Yeah.
I actually was almost in a movie with him, so I joke about that all the time. But it is one of my favorite movies, ironically. And the bad guy, which I think they did a great job of Creed. It's like sometimes people aren't bad in the way that you think, right? They're being pushed to be bad, right? And
Sure.
I thought that Creed did a great job of even flushing that out even more because even in Rocky 4, it's about coming together.
Yeah.
At the end of this battle, it's like, can we just shake hands and like, it's like that spirit that you see at the end of Super Bowl, right? I mean, it's like one of those teams is going to be, elated and one of them is going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
And yet they're still going to come together and they're going to realize that there's life after and they're going to, just be, great people and shake each other's hands. So I always look at that and I think of that in my career too. I try to bring that spirit of, team players, team spirit, because I mean, film is the ultimate team sport. It
Yeah.
really is. It's like you have masters of craft. You have the director, who is your coach, who's looking outside of yourself, and the producers that, are your OCs and your DCs, and then you've got your players, right? And it's really cool because it becomes like this thing of master of craft,
Yeah.
right? And that's what I love so much about film. And so I think I realized from this film that not only do I love being an actor, which I do, it's my first love, but I really, really love being a collaborator.
Yeah.
Like I really, really love being a collaborator. I really love those off-screen conversations. I love telling stories that are bigger than myself, and I love doing it with a team of people that I really care about.
Every time I watch a movie and literally sit through the credits, I think it's amazing that all of it came together. because it's like life. Like
It
you have,
is.
you know what I'm saying? You have to
Yeah.
drive your car, the water has to come out of the pipes, you have to have air conditioning or heat or all of these elements that are a part, insurance, all these adult things, and it all somehow magically comes together. So when those credits come down and you see all these human beings that are there, it's like, wow, they completely built this building and now they're showing it to the world and it's going to be inhabited for the rest of your life. For all these years after The Godfather was made in 72, all these people have come into this building and they've made their own offshoots of it. It's just such a wonderful, absolute creation that just continues to create. It's such a cool thing, man.
Amen. Art is inspiring, and I think when you're around inspiring people, like you learn. If you're a student of the game, I mean, I don't think I've ever done more learning in my career than I did the 6 weeks. And a lot of that was, these wonderful conversations with Graham and Michelle and all these relationships that I made, with Brandon Smith and Eden and Joe, because again, like I think I've always been a student of the game. And I think I've always had that, kind of story that's bigger than yourself mentality and realizing that you need people around you to make the dream happen, right? Even off screen as an actor, it's like I signed with a new agent, HRI Talent, Tanya Kleckner and Richard John Martin, Ignite Talent Management. I hired a PR team, Mia Hansen. Like these are all people that help me as a creative stay in my lane.
Yeah,
So I give them full credit in the work. Like I give them full credit because they give me the opportunity to not have to worry about the business side of it. Because again, they don't want that for me. They want me to stay creative, right? And so sometimes you have to find a way to balance out those two worlds, right? Because, a lot of dreaming, and I learned this pretty early on because I started in dinner theater. It was one of my first professional gigs. You're on stage and then you're off stage saying, "Can I refill your Coke for you?" It's humbling. It gives you that like just mentality that like, sure, it's your dream, but it's gonna be work. And that's okay because if you love the work, then you'll enjoy the dream. And so I feel like it really gave me that mentality growing up of like really just building my team and letting the journey take me where it will. But I got to be honest, Joe, I feel like I'm in the sweetest spot of my career right now because I am just embracing it. I'm enjoying it. I really do feel like for all the best reasons that I've ever had because I just feel grateful right now and fulfilled.
absolutely. So somewhere in Montana, let's get to the good business. If anybody
Yeah.
wants to catch it, any news, anything that will help people actually see this film on the big screen, how can they do it?
Absolutely. So the best way is to give me a follow at Matt Drago, Mattdrago. Right now I have the places that are screening it, but there is an expansion pack coming, which I will post. When it comes to more theaters, I will put a list. I also have all of my link tree there. It's got my website, actually both website, macdrago.com, which is my actor website, Dragon Hunter Productions, which is my production website. It's also got my IMDb if you want to look up my past and future projects. On my website, there's a little widget and it shows basically on Fandango where it's playing right now. There's a little bit of a pause happening, but with the expansion, we're hoping to get into more theaters. And then when it goes to VOD and streaming platforms, I'll make sure that I'll post that as well. So easiest way to do it is just give me a follow there, and I'll keep you in the know for everything that's going on in my professional, but also my personal life because they're one and the same,
Yeah.
and you kind of have to bridge the gap sometimes. And I don't like to just be like the person that's promoting. I like the person that's also letting people into my life and my creative journey as an artist.
Absolutely. What a joy. Thank you so much. And I will have all of this in the show notes. It was wonderful to meet you, man. Best of luck with everything. And go Chiefs on Sunday, huh?
Hey, go Chiefs, man. You know what? If there's one team that could do it, even Tom Brady said. I mean, it's the Chiefs, and it's that mentality of you got the ball, right?
Yeah.
And it's like it's that same thing I almost relate to being an actor right now. I feel like I have the ball, and it's like when you have someone like, Pat and Kelsey and their, Tooney on their offensive line and listen, Kareem Hunt, let me tell you,
Yeah.
he is the ultimate redemption story. He's going to have a game on Sunday. I can feel it. He is going to be fired up. And then obviously that Spags defense, I mean, firing at all cylinders. It's got to be about stopping Saquon, but enjoy it, my friend.
Yes.
It's going to be historic for
It's going
sure.
to be wonderful. Absolutely. Yeah, you do
Yeah.
the same. Again, man, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking time out.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
Cheers.